Welcome to Future-Proofing Your Automation Pipeline. Applitools is happy to presenting today's event with our partners from Cypress.io. It's my pleasure to welcome our speakers and introduce them to you. First up, Andrew Knight from Applitools. Andrew Pandy Knight is the automation panda and a software quality champion who loves to help people build better quality software. As our principal developer advocate here at Applitools, he helps folks make sure their apps are visually perfect. He also serves as director of Test Automation University, which offers a multitude of free courses from the world's leading instructors. And from Cypress, Eli Lucas. Eli is a senior developer experience engineer at Cypress and loves all things web and mobile. He lives in Denver with his wife and his 4 kids. Let's give them both a virtual round of applause. And with that, I will hand it over to you, gentlemen.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Pam. I'm extremely excited to be here today to talk to everybody and to be doing this joint webinar together. Andrew, how you doing today, my friend?
Doing well. How are you, Eli?
I am doing awesome. So I just said I'm extremely excited to be here today, and the reason for that is that I have been working on this application. And this application is kind of like this new demo app that we're building here at Cypress. And I'm looking at getting it like set up and putting some automation behind it and seeing like what we can do to help this application like grow and prosper and all that kind of stuff. Like I said, it's like a demo application, but it's something that we're going to be like heavily reliant here at Cypress. And so, hey, were you willing to take a look at it with me today and give me some help on getting this set up?
You're dang right.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to share my screen here real quick. I'll give everybody a quick tour of the app. And boom. Okay, so this app we like to call it's called Cypress Heroes, and if this is kind of a take on the Angular Tour of Heroes app, if you've ever done the quintessential like Angular tutorial off of their website, like you build this application. So we kind of took that, we took it a few steps further, add a little bit more functionality. You can like log into it, you can like admin it, like you can manage the heroes, and you can see them. And then from here, you got this opportunity. It's kind of like a social network for like superheroes as well. And so you can like a hero, you can hire a hero, but in order to do so, like you have to be logged in. And so I'm gonna go ahead and log in real quick. And now that I'm logged in, I can go ahead and and you can see that when I like the number of fans there is incrementing. And if I want to go ahead and hire the hero, I can click it and hit yes. And then when I do that, the number of saves that they get goes up because, you hired them, they got the job done. So good for them, increasing their stats. So this app, the front end is a React app. The back end is a Node app. It uses a real database. We got some tests already written for it. I'll go ahead and run those real quick so we can see.
So we're full stack JavaScript.
Full stack TypeScript, actually.
Ooh, even better. It's like a boss.
Yeah. Let's see. So we'll say in testing. So this app actually has, with Cypress, you can do end-to-end testing, which we're actually traditionally known for. But you can also do component testing if you're using a component-based framework like React, Vue, Svelte, Angular. One of those, you can write component tests for your application as well. But also for our backend, we're doing API testing as well. And we're doing that using a plugin from one of our community members called Cypress Plugin API. And I'll show that a little bit too, but that gives us a nice interface like when we're actually inside the Cypress app to test APIs.
Is that the one Philip Ritz developed?
That is the one Philip developed.
Oh, yeah.
In the wrong.
I remember when he was building that thing, he was showing me some of the beta versions. It was really cool.
Yeah, it's really cool and it's super fun to play with. I found like while I'm working with it, it almost replaces like a tool like Postman in my workflow to test the APIs, because I could just write a test and do everything that I would do manually in Postman and have it run.
Yeah.
Right,
I mean,
so
sorry, go ahead.
no yeah, we'll get to those API tests here in a second. But yeah, here's the end-to-end tests.
Okay.
And I got right now a pretty good suite of end-to-end tests that pretty much covers all this application.
Nice.
Now, one of the things that I know that I think we could do is probably add some code coverage to it to like give us like stats and stuff like that. And that's probably one of the things that we could think about as we're like, adding to our automation pipeline to make sure that like when people are committing code, they can see the code coverage reports, make sure that the code coverage numbers aren't going down. I'm definitely not one of those people that'd be like, yeah, you need 100% code coverage or anything like that. But I like to think as code coverage as kind of like a health metric that if if you're maintaining a good percentage of code coverage and you're going through your application, like if you all of a sudden add a bunch of code and your code coverage percent goes down, you probably don't have the test to cover that code. So that's why I like it. Let's come over here and go over to component testing as well. Now my component testing, I just kind of actually started working on these, but I got a few of them here, but we'll see. We got a button component. And our button component has a few tests that pass. And we got, where's my mouse? There it is. The hero card that we saw that goes through. And then I got a test for the login form as well, testing login form. Now, kind of the main difference between our end-to-end tests and our component tests is that our end-to-end tests are hidden in an actual web server and hitting the site just like your user would. Mm-hmm. These component tests, these components are being mounted in isolation outside of your typical web server. So you can only have to worry about testing this particular aspect of the component. It makes the testing a lot easier. I think component tests share a lot of the same similar aspects as unit testing. They're like fast, easy to run, reliable, like cheap, but they don't like give you that entire like end-to-end coverage that you normally get with like an end-to-end test.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always think of them as like UI unit tests.
Yeah. All right, and then we'll take a peek at those API tests too. Those are actually in the separate server project.
Sure.
And let's see, npx Cypress open. And so we don't like have like a space to call like API tests or integration tests or anything like that. We have end-to-end testing, component testing, but the API tests are more like end-to-end testing. So that's where I have them set up at. And we'll go ahead and run those in Chrome.
Look at that.
Yeah, and so you can see here, like we got this, and then over here we're like seeing like all of our results that we're getting, the response, the status codes, all this other kind of stuff. Let's see, like we can come down here to like a post request and view that. Take a look at the headers that were sent, the headers that were returned, all this kind of fun stuff that you normally get from a tool like Postman.
Yeah, and it's just baked into the app, which is really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's one thing I really do like about Cypress is basically a web app that tests a web app. And so you could like extend Cypress as an app with things like this to help you do your testing and to have it all seamlessly integrated. It's really, really cool stuff.
Yep. All right. So one of the things that I'm kind of wondering about as we like push this app up into production and other developers start to work on it and stuff like that is like getting the pipeline set up for it. Now I've started it a little bit using GitHub Actions, and I kind of want to run through the file with you.
Let's do it.
You are the automation panda. You are like the expert. So I'm looking for your feedback.
Sure. Expert. I know some things.
Yeah. And I'm typically a front end developer, so this isn't necessarily my forte, but I can get in and definitely copy code or copy stuff out of like Stack Overflow with the best of them for set this up. All right. Also, we got a poll that just popped up talking about like, hey, what CI/CD service are you using? So like I said, we're going to be showing off GitHub Actions here today, but we're interested to know both Cypress and Applitools run on all the other different platforms. So let us know what you're using.
Yeah. I really do like GitHub Actions though, and I'm so glad you were doing it here in GitHub Actions, because I guess for me personally, with a lot of times when I'm working on like smaller projects, I guess you could say, it's easiest just to have your CI interactions just baked into your repository, have it all in one place, have it something that is declarative, like what you're showing here in this YAML file. I'm sure there are some people on the call who have been doing this for years. If anyone remembers Jenkins way back in the day before the Blue Ocean release, where you literally had to do everything in that web form. I mean, at the time it was great, but now we look back on that, it's like, man, you spent a lot of manual time like trying to find a field and a form and plugging it in. But when you have it here, like, under, the .github/workflows folder, it's just a YAML file. And then you can just declare everything you need. If you want to make changes, you can put it in revision control, diff any differences to see exactly what changed. And it just, it automates so many things so nicely to come alongside of what you just do with other GitHub things. Like if you open a pull request, you can have it automatically kick off your tests and do linting and maybe even do some static code analysis for you before you even merge it in, and it can do some damage.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a quick tour of this YAML file real quick. So up above, I have some environment variables that are set up. First, I have the API URL that the client app uses to communicate to the API.
Okay.
And then I already have this app hooked up to the Cypress Cloud, where we can send all of our test results to the Cypress Cloud, and we can use that for analytics and diagnostics and just reporting and helping optimize our test workflows. And then the Cypress the Cypress Cloud also requires a GitHub token, so it can correctly identify like what PR is being merged and all that kind of fun stuff.
Yep.
Then down below.
I was going to say, I like how you defined your environment variables at the top. For folks who are kind of new to GitHub Actions, you can define environment variables per step in a job. In fact, that's how I used to do it historically. But anymore, I like to do what you did here. Put them at the top so you can just see declaratively, boom, this is what everything gets. Yeah,
especially if we had to go through an exercise last week where we had to rotate all of our environment variables.
Oh yeah, the Circle CI thing. Oh
yeah, and to go through and try to like find out like where all those are and where all those are kept. Like having them at the top here like is definitely helpful.
Hashtag future proofing.
There we go. Okay, so we got our job. I called it build and run tests. It's pretty simple. I only have one job right now in this GitHub action. I wanted to try to keep it simple. And then once you get it up and running, I felt like you could probably always expand and make it more robust later. Okay. So the first thing we're doing is we're checking out the code using the actions, checkout action straight from GitHub. And so this is going to pull down our main branch. We're installing the dependencies. So this is using the Cypress GitHub action. And the Cypress GitHub action does a few things for you that you normally wouldn't have to do. One of those is like building your application or NPM installing the dependencies or Yarn installing the dependencies, all that kind of fun stuff. And so this takes care of a few of those steps. We're given a custom build command. And that's because since we have a couple of steps here in our job, the first thing that we're going to do is build the app. That way, these subsequent jobs don't have to like build the app again. And we're telling it to run the reset and run test to false, which is a parameter to the Cypress GitHub action. Because we don't want to run the tests here, we're going to run the tests separately down below.
Sure.
Okay. And then we have first off we have our component tests.
Okay.
And this is using our GitHub action. We're telling it to install false since we installed it up above.
Okay.
And then we're running our custom test command. And then this basically fires up Cypress in run mode and does component testing. And then this record true is telling the GitHub action to send the results to Cypress Cloud.
Sure.
And then we have start the client and server. And that is for both end-to-end tests and API tests require the application to be up and running. Component tests, we're just testing your code. The end-to-end tests and API tests, we're actually hitting live servers and URLs and whatnot.
Sure.
So this run command will start up both the React app and the Node server. And then it's going to run the end-to-end tests. And so once again, we're telling it to not install the dependency since it was already done. And then we're running the command to do the end-to-end testing. And this wait on right here, this will wait to make sure that both the client URL, which is this first one, and the API URL, which is this one, are both up and running before it will start the test. Because if it starts the test before they get up and running, you're going to have some that fail and whatnot. And so this is another thing that the Cypress GitHub action does, is it you have this option to wait for these services to be live before the testing starts.
That's real clever. So if I can ask a question here, what browser or browsers will these npm run test commands use? Just Chrome or something else?
So by default, it's going to use Electron.
Okay.
And so it's going to use the Chromium browser built into Electron.
Sure.
And the reason why I'm doing that right now is because if I want to do other browsers, I have to make sure those browsers are actually installed on the runner that is doing them. And we do provide Docker images that you can add to your configuration here to download the different browsers. But to do that, like, it increases the size of the file, makes the runs longer and stuff like that. And for initially getting started, like, I'm happy like running them inside of Electron. It's basically Chrome. And
sure.
Yeah, it'll work.
So then when it does the install dependencies and build, I'm assuming the Electron app is just kind of bundled with Cypress or whatever, so that it can have that out of the box.
Yeah, that's one of the things that the Cypress GitHub action does too. Is it makes sure that the Cypress binary, the Electron app itself, is downloaded and installed.
Sure, and I assume it runs headlessly by default.
It's going to run headlessly because the command that I have set up in these scripts is run mode. And run mode is headless, and open mode is with the UI. Awesome.
That's really cool. Great.
Yep. And then API test, this is very similar to end-to-end tests, except the one difference is that since we're not hitting the actual client app, we're only hitting the API app. We're only waiting to make sure that the API URL is up and running.
Got it. That makes sense. So another quick question I have, roughly how long do each of the test suites take? Like a minute, couple minutes?
Yeah, probably a couple minutes, I would say. I can pull up the GitHub page here, and we can actually go and look at the past few ones that have ran.
Nice.
And so you can see here, I was, working frantically right before this presentation started to get something up and running.
Yeah.
But yeah, the entire pipeline was 3 minutes, 50 seconds for all three test suites. We can come in here and take a look at the results for all of them. And so first we'll look at the component test.
Yeah, so that looks like 49 seconds there. Okay, not bad. That's pretty quick.
Yeah. And then, so we can see the results. We can see that the results are being uploaded to Cypress Cloud. So we can actually go into Cypress Cloud and like watch replays of all these tests that happened. And then down here in like end-to-end tests.
Yep, so that's about minute 18, I think I see. So about a minute and a half or so. All right. That's not too bad because you have, I think I saw like 3 end-to-end tests.
Yeah, I got 3 end-to-end specs, which probably have, I don't know.
Oh, multiple in there. Okay.
Yeah, multiple tests per spec in there.
Got it. That's actually pretty good speed then.
Yeah, I think the majority of the time is like getting the job spun up versus actually running the test, because there's not a whole lot. That the truth. Yeah, not a whole lot of tests in here right now. Running them locally, locally you run the tests in like 15, 20 seconds, something like that.
Sure. which is still pretty good.
Yeah.
And then the API test, look at that, man. Lightning fast, 13 seconds. Boom.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Looking at the chat here real quick. Looks like we have a couple of questions. Somebody's asking if we can provide more context of what we're looking at. Yeah, sorry about that. We did just kind of jump in and start talking, but so I have this application that's a web app, and we're looking at like building out the pipeline to future proof it for using different services and whatnot. And so earlier I was showing the tests, and those tests were for various different types of tests for that app and the code as well. And then what we're looking at here is the GitHub action that's ran whenever we push code to the repository.
Awesome.
And just shown API tests here real quick, but it's a lot of the same.
Sure. Yeah, I saw somebody in the chat saying that GitHub Actions might be having some issues right now. So we'll just have to tread lightly.
That might be unfortunate.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. We can still do stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So nice.
All right. So one of the things that I was looking for your help with is we got our Cypress test running, and those are great. But something that's happened to me quite a bit when running Cypress tests. Let me get it up and running here again.
Mm-hmm.
And since all your Cypress tests, they're all run inside of a browser, and you can see them. You can visually see them, and you can go and inspect to make sure that they're looking correctly and whatnot. But this is kind of almost a manual step to go and like review like your runs inside of the Cypress Cloud. Mm-hmm. And something that I've actually run into before is like somebody might come into the code base and make a change, like accidentally removing the main style sheet.
Oh, yeah.
Like this, right? And we can do that, and we can see that the site's no longer running properly. But if I rerun the tests, all my tests are still passing. But something is obviously wrong, right?
Yep.
And
automation.
Yeah. And so I know with Applitools, we can probably do something with Applitools to help this. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this what you have is the poster child textbook case example of what visual testing is all about, right? Okay. Visual testing is meant to automate the things that traditional automation is not so good at, right? Because, if you've got particular IDs for elements on your page, as long as they're in the DOM somewhere, your traditional automation scripts with something like Cypress are still going to find it, click it, type it, whatever, and it's going to pass through like you've seen. Even though to us as humans, we look at it with human eyes and be like, wow, that is really broken. Applitools Eyes, it seeks to use visual AI to look at an app as if it had human eyes, and to be able to detect these kinds of visual differences that traditional assertions struggle to capture. So if it's cool with you, do you want to try to add some visual snapshots to these end-to-end tests you've got?
Yeah, I think that would be awesome.
Alrighty, cool. So first question, do you already have an Applitools account?
So I did take the time. I went and I created a brand new account, free account.
Nice.
And I got my API key, and that is pretty much where I left it.
Good. That's step one. For everyone on the call, you can register a free Applitools account at applitools.com/register. Just pop in your GitHub name or your email, and you'll be good to go. And that API key that Eli just mentioned, we're going to need that for when we run tests with Applitools. Okay, so step one is done. let's move on to the next thing. Can we go to Visual Studio Code again? There is one package that we'll need to install, and that's the Applitools Eyes SDK.
Okay, let me come
so
here.
npm install. And the name of it is the @Applitools slash TOOLS / now eyes-Cypress.
Eyes-Cypress. There we go.
Yep, you got it.
Does this need to be developed or dev dependency?
It can be a dev dependency. It can be a regular dependency, whichever you prefer. Probably makes sense in this case for dev dependency. And this is the Applitools Eyes SDK for Cypress. We have Applitools Eyes SDKs for basically every tool framework. You want Selenium, you want Puppeteer, you want Playwright, you want WebDriver IO. I mean, you could even do it with just plain old like PNG files and PDF files too, if you wanted.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I originally started it in the wrong directory, canceled it, and went into the right directory. Continue.
Okay, cool. So now that we've got that, the next thing we need to do is we'll need to do an Applitools configuration file. So like you see where you've got your Cypress config JS file. Mm-hmm. Basically, we want one that's called Applitools JS config.
Config.js, right?
Yep. Oh, config JS. Did I say JS config? My bad. Config JS. Oh my gosh. Wow. Live coding. Okay. So in here, this is going to be a JSON file, or no, not a JSON file. This is a JavaScript file. And so it's going to be fairly similar to the Cypress one. We're going to have a module.exports equals. And then it's going to have, JSON-like objects. So in here, what we're going to do is we're going to specify the configuration for running visual tests. This is, again, going to be very declarative. There's a separation between declaring configuration and actually adding test steps. And the one thing I love about our Cypress API or Cypress SDK is it has that clean separation. So one of the settings we want is called batch name, lower camel case, batch capital N name. And we're going to set that to, it's going to be a string. What's the name of your demo app?
Sci Heroes.
So let's say something like Sci Heroes visual tests.
Space is okay?
Yeah, sure. Okay. This is just something that's going to give a name to the collection of tests together that we'll see in the Applitools dashboard. Just kind of a reporting tracking thing.
Yep.
All right. Okay. So then the next setting we're going to do is we're going to set the browsers. So this one is just lowercase b browser, singular, and it's going to be a list. And each one of these is going to be an entry that specifies a browser configuration. So let's do something like, these are all going to be objects as well. So we'll need some squiggle braces. And let's say the first one, lowercase name. And we'll set this to lowercase Chrome. Chrome is popular. It has market share. And then we're going to have a width and height setting. So now I'll ask you, what's a viewport size that you want to try?
Let's do maybe like 1024 by 768.
Sounds good to me.
The height as well?
Exactly. Yep.
And these are numerics like this?
Correct. Cool. So let's do a couple other browsers. So we can basically just copy and paste this and change the setting values. What's a browser you want to try?
Let's do Firefox.
Let's do Firefox. How about we do a slightly different viewport? How about 800 by 600? Make it a little smaller.
This might expose some visual bugs. I haven't tested them that small.
Cool. All right. And let's do one more. Let's do Safari, just for the heck of it. And then this one, let's make it a little bigger. How about 1600 by 1200? Cool. All righty.
Now, is this desktop Safari or iOS Safari, or what are we talking about here? Desktop.
So this would be desktop. Do you want to do a mobile device as well, just for the hell of it?
Yeah, that's actually kind of an interesting combination with adding it to Cypress, because typically, since Cypress runs inside of an Electron app, it's kind of hard for us to test mobile browsers, right?
True story.
Yeah.
So let's do this one too. Now the settings for this one are going to be a bit different. Instead of having a name, we're going to have a device name.
Device like this.
Yep, and capital N name. Yep, and let's do something like a Pixel 2. This will be a capital P and a space and then a 2, just to give it like just a generic kind of phone. Okay. And then instead of width and height, we're going to have screen orientation. Mm-hmm.
Like that? Mm-hmm.
Yep. And let's do portrait, lowercase p portrait. Yeah, that's good. And I think we're missing a comma on the line above, line 21. There we go. Yep. So what we've just done here in this file is we've configured Applitools eyes to say, hey, here's your batch name for every time you run tests. And then we are going to run your visual snapshots that you capture from your local machine, which either will be you running it locally or in the GitHub action. It captures snapshots as it goes, which we're going to do next. And it's going to re-render those snapshots on these 4 browser configurations in the Applitools UltraFast script. So even if you're like running this on Windows where you don't have Safari, or like you were saying, like this mobile emulator here for Pixel, it doesn't matter, because a snapshot is just going to be a capture of that full page. Applitools will do the re-rendering with the appropriate size, the appropriate browser configuration, and all that will happen in the cloud. So essentially, you can do multi-browser and multi-platform testing. And all you have to do is make it so. Just say it. I want this. Boom. And you got it.
There we go.
Alrighty. So let's save this file. Now we have completed the configuration part of it. The remaining thing to do would be to update the test to capture visual snapshots. So let's take a look at those end-to-end tests that you had before. And whichever spec you want to do first, feel free.
Let's start with this homepage one.
Yeah, let's do it. Okie dokie. So this looks boilerplate. Cypress uses Mocha under the hood for the main test framework.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Cool, man. Cool. They all blur together after a while. Oh my gosh. I'm doing good to remember this stuff. Okay, so we've got our homepage. Actually, we haven't walked through this test case yet, have we?
We saw it run live, but I can go through and explain what's going on inside of the code itself real quick.
Yeah, can you do that for us, please? Just to kind of keep everybody together.
Mm-hmm. So like I said, we are using a real backend and a real database for these tests. Okay. So one of the things that you want to do while you're testing is you want to make sure that one test doesn't really interfere with another test. And what we're doing in these tests is we're going through and we're actually modifying some of the heroes that are in the application. We're liking them and we're hiring them. Those accounts are increasing, all that kind of stuff. We might be deleting them or adding new ones. Mm-hmm. And so the state of the application actually changes per test. But in order to get around that, what we're doing is we're actually creating a brand new hero for us to work with for our tests. That way we're not modifying any of the other ones. And then when we're done, we're deleting that hero. So it's gone. It's not going to affect any of the other tests as well. And so we're using that using Cypress tasks. That actually, Cypress task is code that actually runs on the Node process part of Cypress. So it's not running in the browser, it's running in Node. And it's going through and it's directly communicating with our database to add the hero, delete the hero, all the other type of setup tasks that we want to do before we actually run our test. And so that's what we're doing here on line number 5 inside of this before each. So it's going to happen before each of the tests. And then we're visiting the homepage. When we're done, what we're doing is we're getting access to that hero because it gets alias. This is how you access an alias inside of Cypress. You prepend it with an @ sign. And
okay, I was wondering what that was.
Yeah, we get our new hero, and then we call sci.delete hero, which is going to call the database to delete the hero. And so then from there, at the start of every test, we get our hero, so we know what the hero is, and then we find the hero card by its name. We find the button that has the like. Right now we're using data-size selectors, so we can actually select it. There's multiple ways you can write selectors for your app. This is the way that this particular app is using.
Nice.
And we're clicking the button. And so this test is making sure, like, hey, you need to be logged in before you can like this hero. And so we're making sure that that modal popped up that says, like, hey, you have to be logged in to like. We're clicking the OK on the modal, and then we're making sure that that modal disappears. So it should not exist anymore.
Interesting.
Down below, we have another suite that is when a normal user is logged in. And so we're using a custom Cypress command, sci.login, to log in with this username and password. And if we go look at that code real quick. So you can define these custom commands. It's kind of like making your own function, encapsulating a little bit of logic so that it can be reused and whatnot. But let's ignore. I'll come back to this session here in a second. But what we're doing on login is we're going to the homepage. We're finding the login button, clicking it, finding the email box, typing in the username that was passed in, the password that was passed in, clicking the button to sign in, and then we're making sure that the login button was replaced with the logout button.
Oh, okay. Got it. So that's kind of like the synchronization. Like that's to verify that login was actually successful. You got on the page and it thinks you're logged in. So, okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay. Now this sci.session, what this is doing is it's caching a session for us. That way we don't have to actually run through the login flow for each and every test. What sci.session does is it takes the local storage, it takes the cookies, all that kind of fun stuff, and then caches them and then restores them based on this key for each test. This is a mechanism to help speed up your test so you're not having to go through the whole flow of actually logging in again. And so if this session already exists, it's going to restore all those local storage items and whatnot, and then that way your user is pretty much already logged into the app.
Nice. Oops.
Oh, where'd I go?
Okay.
So we got a set of tests for when a normal user is logged in.
And so that's so you did the login as a before each. So that means like the first time. I just want to make sure I understand this. First time it runs, it goes in before each, looks at the login. Login hasn't happened yet. It does log in with these credentials. Runs a test. Cool. Second test comes in before each. Oh, login. It finds it had logged in as that username, goes to its session cache, gets that, and moves forward without repeating. True?
Yep, exactly.
Sweet. Okay, got it.
Okay, and then we have a couple or another suite here that talks about when an admin user is logged in, because an admin user can go to the edit user page, they can delete a hero from the main page and all that kind of stuff. So that's what these, and pretty much the only difference here is we're logging in using admin at test.com instead of test at test.com.
And that's why your session used the different username and its key to cache, because you could have different. Oh, that's smart. Okay.
There you go. Sweet. Okay, so we're looking at getting Applitools in here.
Sure. I just saw in the chat someone had a quick question. Where are the negative login tests? Ooh. I'm guessing we haven't written them yet.
Negative, like for when,
like if you fail, you use the wrong username or password or something.
So that's kind of an interesting question. Like, where do you put those tests? And so I actually do have negative login tests, but they're not in end-to-end tests. They are in component tests, and I'll show you that. I'll show you that real quick.
Okay. Yeah, let's hop over.
Yeah.
I'm curious now. This is interesting.
Yeah. So over here in the login form component test, let's see, we got right here. So we got when an email and password is invalid, an error should show. And so I'm using sci.intercept to mock the API request that goes to the auth endpoint. And I'm returning back a status code 401, which represents an invalid login. And so we go through here, we mount our login form, we type in the username, password, click the login button. This is where the intercept is going to happen and return back this mock response. Our app knows when we get back a 401 status code that the credentials were invalid. And then we look for the invalid email or password.
Nice.
And so this is kind of interesting thing, like when you're taking a look at like, hey, I can either write a component test or an end-to-end test. But if I'm going to do a component test, it's easier for me to set up the mock data, like using like site.intercept versus trying to get the database in a particular state to do that. Now, this is a little bit of a contrived example because I can easily come up with a bad username that doesn't exist in the database to do this. But as you're starting to work out your tests, like I like to think of end-to-end tests as just kind of like a general flow of how a user is going to go through the app. And then the edge cases and whatnot that I can put into a component test, I like to do so because the component tests are going to run faster. They're more repeatable and all that kind of fun stuff. And so I like to have, like I said, it's like a unit test. I like to have a lot of component tests to test these cases, and then the end-to-end test to test like the more like user journeys and flows through the application.
No, that's on point, man. Like this kind of technique, what you're showing is something that I have done historically more with like true unit tests. And probably I'm guessing a lot of people in the webinar today would probably think of this as like mocking for a unit test, but it's a component test. And hence goes back to what I said earlier. I like to think of component tests as UI unit tests because you can do this kind of thing. You can do this level of mocking. And so they run as if they're unit tests, but they're actually doing some UI like coverage, which is really helpful. That's awesome. Cool. Thanks for that diversion, and I hope that answered person's question in the chat. Cool. So ready to add some visual snapshots here?
Let's do it.
Okay. So we've already done the configuration for the runner. What we need to do now is we'll need to create what we call an eyes session. Applitools Eyes is the name of the SDK. The idea is that we open our eyes, we take visual snapshots because we can see them because our eyes are open. And at the end of the test, we will close our eyes to say, hey, we've captured all the snapshots for that session or for that test. And at that point, Applitools Eyes will upload the snapshots that are captured to the Applitools Eyes server, do all of the re-rendering of the things of those 4 browsers in the ultra-fast grid, and then we can log into the Applitools dashboard and we can see exactly what happened with our testing. So inside, we can do this first homepage describe block. We're going to need to add to the before each method, if that's all right. And this is where we're going to open our eyes. Sorry, we got to have fun with this. I think it's a clever name. Eyes open, eyes closed. Okay, so the nice thing about our Cypress SDK is all the Applitools Eyes commands are basically added as Cypress commands. So everything is going to be cy.something. So let's type cy dot eyes open, and it might even autocomplete, I hope, maybe.
Okay. I think we might be missing a step here because in order for something to be a Cypress command, it has to be registered.
Oh, that's right. We have to, you're right. There's one extra step I forgot here with it. We need to set up the Applitools Eyes stuff with the Cypress project. So let's real quick drop your command line again. We already did npm install on the package. What we're going to need to do is run npx eyes-setup. Good catch. Okay. So now, so what did?
So we got Cypress version, got plugins defined, commands defined, TypeScript defined, and setup is done. Okay, sweet.
Cool. And you could probably even see in your left Explorer some of the files changed. Like it adds. So there you go.
Here we are importing it, and then here importing. Okay, so this is what's going to give us our IntelliSense right here. And
yes.
And then I imagine in the Cypress configuration file, yeah, we got this here. Now I do foresee. Well, let's run it, but I think I might foresee a problem with this right here because I'm using Vite. But we'll give it a try.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think I had hit that once upon a time too. Easy fix.
Okay.
Okay. So let's try this again. CY dot eyes. There we go. So we want eyes open. And squiggle braces. We're going to pass some stuff in. 2 values. We want to pass an app name. And this we could name the CY Heroes app. Again, this is going to be logging, reporting stuff. And then test name. And what I like to do here is I just like to give the Cypress current test title. So
okay, so we can get that off the Cypress.
Indeed. Current test.
Yeah, current test.
And there's like a name or title field. Boom, there we go.
There we go.
And so,
so that will give us our homepage right here, I think.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, like another thing I've seen a lot of people do is they might put their Cypress eyes open code actually in the test case, so like the it function. I like to put it in the before each, so that way I don't have to duplicate this call all over the place. Okay. So that's the before. In the after each, we'll just need to add one line, cy.eyes close. Boom, very good. And now we can update our test. Let's just do one and give it a try, make sure it's good. So here, let's quick refresh on this test. So it looks like there's a point where we want to check to make sure that it contains a particular hero name. You must log in. You do something else, and then you check something else.
So right here, we're making sure that the modal pops up.
Sure.
Saying you have to be logged in to like, and then we're clicking the OK button on the modal, and then we're making sure the modal goes away, essentially.
Sure. So if that's the case, it sounds like we probably want 2 snapshots for this test. You know, one at the first part, and then one after you click that modal and it goes away.
Okay. So
what we could do after line 26, we could add a new line. We could say cy.eyes check window. And in here, there's a bunch of different things we could do. What I want to do just for the simple case, let's just capture the whole window. So squiggles inside to pass some values here. We're going to give it a tag, which will be kind of like the name of this. What would you name this page?
So this is the home page, and this particular check is the you must be logged in modal.
Okay, so we could put that name, homepage with you must be logged in modal. Explicit is better than implicit, in my opinion. I grabbed that directly from the Python community in their Zen of Python. These names, this will be attached to that visual snapshot. It's just going to be descriptive to help us know what's going on.
Okay.
So in addition to tag, let's give a target as well. And this is just going to be the string window. Oh, and even IntelliSense. There we go. Yep, we want window. And then let's one more setting. We're going to do fully. And this will be a Boolean value of true, meaning I want the whole window. Okay. If you saw in the IntelliSense it popped up that you could do region instead of window. If we didn't want to capture everything, we could actually capture like a region, like a div, or even an individual elements. So that way we can kind of tune the type of snapshot we want to do. But
nice.
For right now, if people just getting started, I suggest try full Windows first and then refine later as you go.
Okay. And so what about, you said do we want to do another one after this?
Yeah. So so we can basically copy the whole call there and paste it after that. And then we could say something like modal, like homepage without modal or something, or you must be logged in not appearing, or
modal dismissed.
There you go. Very cool. So 2 visual snapshots. Very, very straightforward to write. Something that we could consider, and again, this is up to you as the tester if you want to do this. Some of those other assertions you have, you might arguably be able to remove them because the visual snapshot is going to capture everything on that window. You don't have to explicitly point out this element, that element. If it's there visible, we're going to capture it. We're going to track it over time.
All right. So yeah, we'll just comment them out and see how that goes.
Yeah. I would say that should be totally fine. So like you still would need to keep all of your interactions, like finding the button and clicking it, right? Like that interactions you're still doing just like a traditional test. But your assertions, by and large, you can probably remove most of them. Now it's not, I don't want to say remove all the assertions. There are certainly things where if you want to check like a very specific date format or a very specific numeric value, of course you still want to keep those there. But I have found that probably the majority of assertions I would have written otherwise, especially for things like it appears or it doesn't appear, that's the kind of stuff we can just get rid of and replace with visual assertions.
Okay. I did see a question that just popped up from Judy asking, where did the window come from? And I assume we're referencing this target right here. And so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what we're saying here is when we're taking this visual snapshot, we're taking the visual snapshot of the entire browser window.
Correct.
And the other option was region. And if we do a region, we can probably specify a particular region of the window to take.
Correct. If we specified region, there's another setting. I can't remember off the top of my head what it is, but it's like you basically provide a selector to identify that region or element on the page that you want to capture instead of the whole window.
Cool.
Great question.
And what's next?
So we should be able to run this test now, assuming that require thing isn't an issue. All we need to do to run it. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say all we need to do to run is make sure that we have our Applitools API key from our account saved as an environment variable.
Okay, and I can do that. I got it right here. And just to be quick with this, so it's going to be an environment variable of the Cypress application, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, just to be quick with this, I'm going to do it right here in the CLI. Please don't go and do anything with my API key. I will rotate it after this, but what's it need to be named?
All caps with underscores, Applitools _ API _ key. And then
boom. Just copied that right out of the dashboard. Applitools.
If you do happen to steal Eli's API key, it doesn't really help you because it just means he's going to see your results and you won't see your results. So, but typically, like Eli said, we'll cycle this after today's show, and then typically you should keep that secret and safe.
Okay. Yeah. So this is what I was expecting to happen with Vite, because with Vite, everything is a module. And I saw that here in this configuration file, we were using a require statement, which isn't allowed. But to fix that, I can come in here and turn this into a common JS module again. And
cool.
All right. Fix it. I'll try again.
Live coding.
There we go.
Nice. Very cool. So let's run the test and see what happens. And so
we left it broken. That's okay.
Oh boy. That's okay. It just means we'll have some rather interesting snapshots. Alrighty, so these Cypress tests are running on your local machine, right?
Right.
Cool. So to see the visual testing results, we will need to view them in the Applitools IS dashboard.
Okay, I got that open right over here.
Nice.
And yeah, looks like everything was fine. Should I hit refresh here? Hey, look at that.
Bam. Cool. All right. So those should be all the tests then. Oh, you're viewing it in grid. Okay. It's a little different than what I'm used to viewing it as. Yeah, that's usually okay. Worried me a little bit. There's like, wait a minute. Oh no, it's different. Yeah. So this is the view I like, personal preference. But you can see on the left, you've got the batch name that we set. CUI here is visual. Then on the main part of the body, you'll see there are actually 4 tests. And you might think, well, we only had 1 test that we wrote, but remember we had 4 browsers. And so each test is run once per browser configuration we specified, hence the cross-browser, cross-platform testing. And you can even see like the browser names, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, or like if you expand the device, you can see if it was a desktop device or like a mobile device like that Pixel 2 there. And so if we open up the snapshots, we can open up one of them. Yep. You can see those were the 2 snapshots that we captured.
Oh, okay.
And so right now these results are new because this is the first time we've run the test. And so it establishes that as a baseline image, meaning anything in the future will be checked against that. So the idea is you would start with something good, even though we did the wrong thing, right? We actually started with the bad, broken one, but that's okay. We could fix it. Baseline is the starting point is good. So that anytime in the future when you run your test again, it'll do 2 snapshots, 4 configurations per this test. Applitools will use visual AI to do the diff, the visual comparison, and you can find the differences and you can judge good or bad. Okay. And then that's where that visual aspect of the testing comes in. Your Cypress results will essentially tell you if it was bare bones basic functional, and then this will tell you what did it actually look like. So it's richer results in a sense.
Very nice. Okay, so I'm really interested to see like what this looks like if I make that visual change. Let's pretend this is the way that it's supposed to look. And then go and fix it. That way, we save a step in getting that there.
Yeah, it's all good. So
okay. So if I come into the code and let's see, that was in the main file. We'll add the style sheet back in. Go back to the tests, and okay, so our app is running. So I'll run the test. Run the test again.
Yeah.
I don't need to do anything in the Applitools dashboard first.
You shouldn't. No. Okay. So every time you run the tests, then it'll just spin up a new batch. Yep. And in fact, it was only the first test that we tried. So the batch should probably already be in the Applitools dashboard by now. We do a refresh.
Okay. So is this little radiating?
Yeah, that's refresh.
That's showing me that there's new batches in there. Nice.
Yep, there you go. So now we'll see it running, and it'll take it. Oh, and there we go. So now it's in unresolved state because it detected a visual difference. Okay. Now, in this case, it's not going to automatically say it's failed because, in theory, a visual difference could be good or bad, right? What if you're making a deliberately good change, right? Visual AI is basically a change detector that makes it obvious to you, the human, to say, hey, is this good or bad? And so it's our responsibility to come in. Then anytime it sees the same kind of passing or failing behavior in the future, it'll remember, but we need to give it that first little seed to say good or bad. Okay. So yeah, let's open up one of those snapshots. We can see it full screen. And actually in the upper left, if you see underneath view in the ribbon, there's like the first icon has a little drop down. That one there. If you see the little drop down arrow and then show both, this is typically how I like to look at them, so we can see very clearly, like, oh, what was different? Very different. Yeah. Now, usually it's not this obvious. Like this case is pretty much the whole dang screen is different. But if it were like a single button that was missing or like something shunted a little bit, it would actually pinpoint. It wouldn't just show the whole thing. It would be like this specific area was different. And that's the power of the visual AI check.
Okay.
So would we want to say this was like yes, this was a good change we wanted to make?
Yeah, I think so, because, it's looking really good.
Yep. So upper right corner, we would give it a thumbs up. And then it will forward to the rest of the tests that we would want to say, yep, that looks good. Again, thumbs up, that kind of stuff. There is some, Applitools will go to the background and kind of track similar images, and it will automatically update those appropriately as well. It's not a perfect system, but it cuts down on the number of times you have to bing, 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 bing.
Yeah.
But yep, so we got them all. So then, yep, we can close the window. The only thing left to do would be in the upper right corner, there's a little save icon. We'll need to save these results that we did. And so now if we were to rerun our test again, Applitools would see the new snapshots and say, oh, yep, we're good. We're good.
Oh, so I hit refresh a little too quickly there, but it looks like there was an error. Was that basically Applitools telling me that there were visual differences?
Yeah. Okay. If at the end it identifies some sort of unresolved state or truly a breaking image, that'll be like, hey, yo, you got issues to look at. Go check your results. Cool. So yeah.
Okay, so this says Cypress detected diff errors. Let's go.
It detected more differences. Interesting. Let's see what it did this time. Oh, something different again. Let's take a look. I'm curious to see what it identified as different. Huh. Maybe it was refreshed too soon. Oh, there's a little tiny
okay.
thing.
So here's something. So this is interesting. So this it's a little hard to see here.
Yeah,
but the heroes have different names because the name of the hero has its ID attached to the end of it.
Okay. So interesting. So there is a quick resolution for this, because every time we would run this again, it would have a new number, and then it would like mark this as different.
Yeah.
So real quick, up in the ribbon, you'll see there's annotations.
Okay.
And then there's an ignore. So click on the ignore. Now drag an ignore box over that little number there. Or you could even do like the whole name, Test Hero 177.
Yeah, that might be safer.
Yeah.
I killed it.
That's okay. Yeah, you could probably highlight it, delete it, and then draw a new one. Or you could probably just draw a second one, whichever. Or maybe even expand it. Yeah, there you go. Boom. And so what this will do is in the future, anytime you do this particular snapshot, it basically just says anything in this box, ignore. So that can be helpful for like test data, things like this. Yep. And in this case, I would say we probably want to mark it as thumbs up again, because this was like, it was good. It just, we had to tune our snapshot, right? We as the human had to come in here and kind of indicate like, hey, cool.
All right. So do I need to do it for each of the screenshots it took?
Yeah. You'll need to add it for each screenshot. A little bit of manual pain for a lot of functional gain. Yeah.
Oh, hopefully I didn't just kill the system.
You're good. Yep. So, but yeah, I mean, that's basically how you would go about visual testing with Applitools and Cypress.
Sweet. Okay.
And then there you go. And then, I mean, we're kind of running out of time here, but going back to the whole pipeline thing that we had, there are two things I want to shout out with that. First one would be, in order to get these tests running in your pipeline, the only difference you'd have to do is with those environment variables, you'd have to inject the Applitools API key there, just like you would the others.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is something I just want to kind of high level let people keep in mind. It's not like we added a fourth suite of quote unquote visual tests. Like we had, the API tests, the component tests, and then the end-to-end tests. It's not like we said a fourth category is visual tests. Visual testing is more of a technique. It's more of an aspect. It's not necessarily its own category of tests. And so right now, it's just part of the end-to-end tests. And in theory, we could probably add it to the component tests too. API testing, no, because that's APIs. That's different. That's not visual. But
anything visual. Yeah,
exactly.
Especially a component test, because with component tests, you're often working in like a design system, and so the visual looks of it is super important. And to have those under a visual UI test, I think is important.
Correct. Yeah, and I mean, it's all you have to do is work in the SDK, and boom, capture some snapshots. You're good to roll.
Right. Okay. Cool. Well, awesome. I think this is really going to help. Help us like build out the rest of this app and write the test for it and whatnot. So I definitely appreciate your time on that. Should we see if there's any additional questions?
Yeah, let's take a look here.
Nisha asked if I write test cases as per the local database for end-to-end testing before the push in GitHub Actions. Won't someone else running those test cases on their systems fail?
Okay, so yeah, this question is, I think, is if you're using a test environment that you're running your tests against, which is pretty common. And so if you're pushing to the database and somebody else's pushes to the database as well, like will it affect each other's tests? And the answer is like it very well could be. Whenever you get some type of shared state involved between the different systems, that has the opportunity to interfere with other tests, which is why in our demo app, we were actually creating the instances of data per test that we wanted to mess around with. That still maybe has the opportunity to affect another test. That's like, let's say like you have a page that has a list of items, and adding that extra items like causes it to page. And so you have to go to page 2 to see it or something like that, or that causes somebody else's model that they're looking for to go to page 2. That's definitely a possibility. The other thing is like if you completely isolate your test environments for your test suite that's currently running, is probably the only way to get around that. But that can be pretty complex to set up and expensive as well. So there's just pros and cons you have to weigh and make the call.
Yep. If I can add on to that, test data is a nightmare.
All right. Judy asked, let's say I run a test when things are bad. Is there a way to clear the results, or how to set the snapshots to be good or bad?
Yes, within the Applitools dashboard, you can manage your baselines so that if you ever wanted to just clean slate wipe everything, you can do that. The idea is that with iterative testing over time, you would catch those changes. So if there was a change, you could always just say, hey, this new run that was detected as a difference, I want this to be the new baseline. As soon as you thumbs up that checkpoint becomes the new baseline for moving forward.
All right. We had another question in the chat. Does eyes-Cypress work like base 64 as a comparison of images in the background? I think Cypress is first, if I recall.
I'm not sure I fully understand the question. Let me try to answer and put in the chat if you were intending something different. Yeah. The way that. Sorry, Eli, you've got something.
Maybe you're getting ready to answer my question, but I was curious, like what is the snapshot that is being sent to Applitools?
Okay, got it. So I'll mush these together and kind of explain how snapshotting works. So when Applitools takes that snapshot, the eyes check window, what we're doing is we're basically capturing the entire DOM of the page in that moment instantaneously. That's why I'm very careful to use the word snapshot and not screenshot. A screenshot is just a rasterized pixelization of rows and columns of all the pixels, right? A snapshot is the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript that make the page come alive. And so we capture that in the moment, and we send that DOM snapshot up to the Applitools ultrafast grid, and that's how it's able to re-render everything. because we have the page in the moment. We can just throw that on new browser configurations and right. That's why it's like, even though, historically Cypress couldn't run their tests on Safari, right? I know there's that new experimental WebKit thing, but with Applitools Eyes, you can have a Cypress test that would render snapshots in the ultra-fast grid on something like Safari. You can actually get away with that. And so that's how the snapshot is captured. Now, as far as like how the visual diff is done, Applitools does not do any sort of pixel-to-pixel comparison. Like I said, like the dumb way of doing visual testing is have all the rows, have all the columns, have all the colors of each pixel, and just kind of go line them up one by one. Do they match? That kind of visual comparison sucks, because all it takes is one pixel of padding to invalidate the whole thing. What Applitools does is it uses something called visual AI, which is basically like a whole bunch of machine learning that's way above my head. I don't even know how it all works, but machine learning magic, in that it has trained, visual AI is trained to look for differences that would be significant to human eyes. So a 1 pixel padding, that's not such a big deal. But if you got a button missing, right? Or like we saw, our hero was like this, right? Those are very obvious. And so the visual AI pinpoints those things. And it can be resistant to things like, hey, not only like if your button is missing or something, but like if one button went missing and it shifted all the others in that row, it's smart enough to be able to say like, oh, well, even though button number 2 in the row was shifted over here, it's actually the same button as was over here. And so you can kind of remove that and filter that out. So that's how the comparison works. Yeah, I mean, it's visual AI is like best in class. Like it's pretty phenomenal how well it works sometimes. So that instead of getting a whole bunch of noise in your visual comparisons, you're actually drilling into what matters, right? It actually helps you, and it's doing the automation of checking what's different and then presenting it to you as the human to make the assertion or validation good or bad.
There are a number of other questions, really specific questions. I did mention this earlier to a couple of people who asked. Be looking for a blog post from Applitools next week where we will delve into some of these as well. And if I know our friends at Cypress, they'll probably be doing the same thing. But I've got one more question, and then I think we will wrap it up. Let's see. I didn't know Cypress did API testing. How does that work? Eli, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so that is using a plugin for Cypress called Cypress Plugin API that allows you to make API requests and get those objects back and write assertions against what comes back. And then the interface that it gives you shows you, we saw it a little bit in the demo, but you can see like the responses that come back, the status codes, all that other kind of stuff. So you're able to do API testing before on Cypress using our site.request object, but this Cypress API plugin gives you more visual tools to use while you're working inside the API as well. So.
Excellent. Excellent. I want to thank everyone for joining us today, for all of your questions. As I said, there will be more follow-up with this. And there are a couple next steps, too, the team wants you to know about. First of all, if you want to learn more, Test Automation University is a free resource that offers some of the web's most loved resources for free learning and automation. Our instructors include well-respected Cypress ambassadors like Philip Rick and Marie Drake, as well as some software testing and test automation thought leaders like Angie Jones, Jason Arbon, Julia Pottinger, and more. There's more than 50 courses spanning multiple frameworks and common tools, and there's something for nearly everyone. And then the team at Cypress has its own learning program too. There are 4 courses where you can learn from top industry experts and level up your end-to-end testing knowledge. Check it out at learn.cypress.io. The Cypress Cloud, you saw that today, maybe for the first time. It's an enterprise-ready, web-based companion to the Cypress app. It gives you online access to your recorded test results, orchestrates test runs across multiple machines, provides rich analysis and diagnostics, and integrates those insights with your favorite tools. To learn more, you can scan the QR code on the page or click the link in your chat. And if you want to learn more about how to use Applitools with Cypress, you can visit our, we have SDKs on many of the most popular frameworks. And Applitools tests web apps, mobile apps, desktop apps, PDFs, screenshots, and more. The SDKs install directly into your project for seamless integration, and there's no need to create new tests or learn new frameworks. You can explore all of our quick starts and claim your free account at applitools.info/BM2. Again, thank you for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you again.